Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast. This is your escape for real, unscripted conversations about sports, hobbies, life, and storytelling. No scripts, no forced takes, just Man Cave talk. Now, here's your host, Dan Casper.
All right, let's knock out another 10, shall we? In our 250 series, America about to turn 250 in less than a month. We are going through the top 250 moments, plays, games, teams, players in America's sports history. You cannot tell the history of sports in the old USA without mentioning these. We have talked about some leagues. We have talked about some athletes, and there's going to be a lot more athletes. We have talked about some teams, and we're going to talk more about them coming up here, and there's going to be more. We've talked about some games, and there's going to be more. Coaches, et cetera, plays, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot to get to. We're not even at the halfway mark yet, okay? So, if you're listening to this and this is the first one you've listened to and you're like, how do you not say this one? Be patient, or maybe go back and listen to the other segments that all of them are available through the Man Cave podcast. Okay? So, without further ado, let's knock out another 10. And I want to stick to the college ranks for this one, just because timing-wise, with all the talk right now and college football with Texas Tech and such, I'm like, you know what? Let's talk about some college teams here. So, since it's college football, when you think about college football, what are some of the teams that come to your mind right away? Whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether you're a fan or whether you're not a fan of that team, who are some of the teams that just jump to the front of your memory bank right away? For me, one of them is Notre Dame. Notre Dame football. Again, whether you like them or not, you cannot tell the history of college football without Notre Dame football. For just because of championships, TV deals, icon movies like Rudy. I mean, a lot of these teams and players and such, we talk about brands and icons, and Notre Dame football, the Fighting Irish, is a brand. Okay, it is a brand. People know about Notre Dame football, even if they can't name a player on Notre Dame football. Whether it is from Rudy the movie, or whether it's because, their games are always on TV. Notre Dame football. I mean, you'll look at it from claimed national championships. You're talking 1924, 1929, 1930, 1943, 1946, 1947, 1949, 1966, 1973, 1977, 1988, to unclaimed. I mean, you're talking 1919, 1920, 1927, 1938, 1953, 1964, 1967, 1970, 1989, 1993, 2012. So, obviously, now with how college football playoff, it's been a hot minute since Notre Dame has captured a national championship by today's standards and that. And I know it's, for a while there was like, okay, poll-wise, Notre Dame gets in the playoff, and it's almost a quick out in that. But they're still an iconic team. They're still a legendary, historical college football team. And you cannot tell the history of college football in America without Notre Dame being a part of that. And they're right at the top. They're right towards the top. If they're not one, they're top two, top three. Another one you'd easily put in there is Alabama football. So if Notre Dame isn't the first team that you are probably thinking about, it's probably Alabama football. Whether it's Paul Bear Bryant or Nick Saban or all the different players that have played for Alabama football over the years. My guy, like Don Hudson, for crying out loud, or some more recent ones. Alabama football. You're talking about, claimed national championships, 1925, 1926, 1930, 1934, 1941, 1961, 64, 65, 73, 78, 79, 92, and then the Nick Saban era, 09, 11, 12, 15, 17, 20. Even got some unclaimed ones in there too. But a dominant, absolutely dominating football program over the years with two iconic coaches throughout its history with Saban and Paul Bear Bryant. You want to talk about brands in sports, teams who are viewed as a brand? Boom, Alabama football. When you think about a lot of these universities, one of the questions that kind of gets thrown out there too is, well, is that a football school? Is that a basketball school? Right? I mean, so a lot of these universities that I'll be mentioning, it's mostly tied to, well, that's because they're a football school. Now, Alabama basketball, I just want to say for men's basketball, they've been pretty relevant the last few years. So I'm not ignoring them, what they've done, but they're a football school. Like, we know a lot of these schools, we know the priority. And for a lot of Division I schools, the priority is football for a lot of them because of money. Unless you're maybe a couple schools that I'm about to say here that, they are basketball schools. Well, let's talk about maybe the biggest basketball school. When you think about college basketball, what's the first team you think of? The first team that comes to your mind when you think about college basketball. There's probably a couple of them, to be fair. There's probably a couple of them. But the one that I'm thinking of is Duke. Now, I know we've talked about Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, in one of our earlier episodes, one of our earlier top tens. And now when you look at Duke, when you talk about the program itself, NCAA Division I tournament champions, 91, 92, 01, 10, 15. John Shire's got him rolling here again too. Replacing a legend, but he's done a really good job. But when you talk about, again, a brand, an iconic team, franchise, organization, whatever, if we're talking pro or college, Duke basketball, man. Duke basketball is right at the forefront. And this is a prime example of when you think about a university and you fill in the blanks of like, well, that's a blank school. This is a basketball school. Yes, they've had football players go through the program and have done, well, or have carved themselves out at the college level, but this is straight up a basketball school. That is the priority. I don't think that's a hot take or anything. Basketball is the priority. Another school that I would throw in there when you think about college basketball, I throw UConn in there. Both men's and women's college basketball. Again, we threw in Gino Auriemma. We've already mentioned him as one of the coaches you think about in the history of sports. And we know what, just as a refresher for what UConn women's basketball, how dominant they have been. National champs in 95, 2000, 02, 03, 04, 09, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then 2025. You're talking, 12 national championships? When you think about women's college basketball, the first team that I think about, and I think the first team that a lot of people think about, is UConn. Maybe you're a little bit more old school yet, and you still think about Tennessee with Pat Summitt. All right, cool. Maybe you think about South Carolina with Dawn Staley. Not a bad one either. But when I think about dynasties and I think about just pure dominance from a women's college basketball standpoint, it's the UConn Huskies. And then you got the men's side, and you look at what they have done in the past, 30-some years? I mean, you go to Jim Calhoun, right? Got some national championships. Then they got the one with Kevin Ollie, which, gosh, it still bugs me that Wisconsin lost to Kentucky on that buzzer beater because I think Wisconsin wins that national tournament, but regardless. So they get that one in, was it 2011? No, 2014. Kevin Ollie. And then Hurley with what he's doing right now with UConn. You're talking about UConn men's basketball. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 national championships. If there was a university that is just basketball university, and you add in both men's and women's basketball at the Division I level, you're going to be hard pressed to make the case that it's not UConn. And honestly, I mean, you could throw maybe a little bit of Duke in there too because they've had some success with the women's teams and North Carolina and that, but I think it's UConn. When I think about straight up basketball from the men's and women's, combining it both, it's UConn. From the sheer domination of their women's team and all those great players to come through from both programs, you can't tell the history of college basketball, both men and women's, in the last 250 years without mentioning the UConn Huskies. Speaking of North Carolina, I mean, I got to throw it again. You want to talk about? You know what? There are some universities, Division I schools, that I think, and we talk about brands and iconics and images and I kind of mentioned this with the Yankees. Like, I feel a lot of people just wear a Yankees a Yankees hat, even though they're not a Yankees fan. Because, oh, that's style. That's a brand. Right? It's like wearing maybe a Nike logo or something. It's the Yankees logo. I kind of feel North Carolina is like that in a sense. Because I remember when I was younger, you had all the, and I remember people wearing Texas hats, with the orange, and maybe it was the color scheme, Carolina blue. But I remember, because I was one of them. Early college years, late high school years, I think I had nearly a dozen North Carolina hats because it was like a brand. And now you factor in the Jordan element to it with the jump man and that. I mean, it takes it to another level. But when you think about college basketball and you think about some of the all-time programs, North Carolina Tar Heels, you're right there. Dean Smith, Roy Williams, the players that have gone through. I think it's one of the best rivalries in all of sports with North Carolina and Duke. They're not far from each other. They're competing a lot for the same recruits. Champions in 57, 82, 93, 05, 09, 17. It's North Carolina basketball is a brand. And now it's really interesting in the last couple of years that we have seen from North Carolina. What have they done from a football side of things? You hire Bill Belichick. Like, okay, we're maybe going to up our football program a little bit. And now with Matt Malone being the men's basketball coach, North Carolina's gone kind of a pro route from a coaching side of things for both their football and basketball teams. Well, we saw the first year of the Belichick era, and not the greatest. I'm really curious because I still view that North Carolina as a basketball school, how this is going to shape up with Matt Malone now. Or not Matt Malone. Did I say Matt Malone is a former DJ colleague of ours, so that's why it's Michael Malone. Mike Malone. So I don't know why I keep saying Matt Malone. Former I-94 DJ. So, but yeah, North Carolina college basketball. Yeah, you got to throw them in there too. And again, I'm not going to be able to get through all of them, and there's going to be more coming up here. So don't yell at me. It's like, well, how can you not say this one and this one? They're probably coming up. So we've what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've done 5. Okay, so let's do. Well, we got to do 5 more. Let's stick with college basketball here, and I mean Kentucky. You got to throw Kentucky in here. When we talk about blue blood programs, and that's kind of where we're going at here with some of these college basketball teams, Kentucky basketball. The level of or I shouldn't say the level, the standard for Wildcats basketball is so incredibly high. And it's even if you have a winning season, if you're not like Final Four, Elite Eight, the expectations are so high at Kentucky that if you're not going to win a championship, you're not going to make these deep runs, you might be on the out. Look at kind of like John Calipari leaving Kentucky to go to Arkansas. And the last time we've had Kentucky become a national champion was in 2012. Now they made some Final Fours in that. But it's been a hot minute since they've won a national championship. You had Rick Pitino there, 96, 98, with Tubby Smith. Those runs, 48, 49, 51, 58. You throw one in 1978, too. Rupp, one of the best college basketball coaches maybe of all time. But it's a blue blood program. It's Kentucky basketball. Where the expectations are, I don't know if they're their highest amongst college basketball teams because, Duke is pretty darn high. Kentucky's pretty darn high. Kansas is pretty darn high. Obviously, North Carolina is pretty darn high. So, it's up there. And speaking of Kansas, you got to throw them in there if we're talking about blue bloods in college basketball. The Kansas Jayhawks. And talk about so first off, they've got 4 national championships, 52, 1988, 08, and 2022. But you look at Kansas basketball, and I still remember watching, the Roy Williams era. Roy Williams took over from Larry Brown. Larry Brown, you probably know him more from his time in the NBA. Well, Roy Williams was there from 88 to 03 and had a ton of success. Just really couldn't get that championship. Last year, when he was the head coach at Kansas, falling to Carmelo Anthony and that Syracuse team. But he goes to North Carolina, his alma mater, and then has success. But then Bill Self, former Illinois coach, comes in, and Kansas, you look at the last, they're like the Pittsburgh Steelers when it comes to coaches, I feel like. That's kind of where I'm at, because you go back to 1964. Ted Owens from 64 to 83. Larry Brown, 83 to 88. Roy Williams, 88 to 03, and it's been Bill Self since then. They're kind of, to me, the Pittsburgh Steelers of college basketball coaches. A lot of consistency. And Larry Brown, your Larry Brown history, he doesn't stay in one spot for very long either. So just 5 years in Kansas is probably, a pretty remarkable feat to begin with. But even so, you go way back to Kansas's history in basketball, James Naismith. Yeah, the father of basketball. The program officially began in 1898 following the arrival of Dr. James Naismith to the school. That was from 1898 to 1907, then from 1907 to 1956, Fog Allen, William O. Hamilton, and then Dick Hart from 56 to 64. And then it was the Ted Owens. I mean, just consistency, longevity from a coaching standpoint. But Kansas basketball, that is, when we talk about arenas too, I've never been there, but I hear like awesome things about the about Allen Fieldhouse. It's on my bucket list that I want to go check it out and to see if it lives up to that hype. But yeah, again, Kansas Jayhawks, you got to throw them in there. I mean, you got to throw in UCLA basketball. A lot of it is John Wooden and that too, but I mean, UCLA basketball, it's the history, the championships. It's, they're still trying to maybe try to capture some of that. Was it Holland? Ben Holland when he was over there in the early 2000s? Got to those Final Fours, but could just never really get to the national championship. And obviously they haven't found that John Wooden national championship magic. But I mean, again, I think, UCLA, and a lot of it is probably due to John Wooden's success. They still have this aura about them. They still have this, light about them that they're a go-to program. Maybe not a go-to program, but they're an iconic program in that. So you do have to throw in UCLA in there, just based off the history and the national champions too. So where are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so we got 8. Well, let me wrap it up with a couple of college football ones. Let's go Ohio State. Ohio State football. I'm going to lump both of them in here for the final two because you can't talk about one without the other. It's Ohio State and Michigan football. Talk about rivalries. Ohio State and Michigan, top 3, top 1 for a lot of people. You certainly can make the case for it. When you're talking about national championships, both of them have a nice group, have a few of them in the trophy case. Ohio State Buckeye football. You look at coaches. For crying out loud, they had Paul Brown in there, Woody Hayes for the longest time. And then, they've gone through highs and lows, ups and downs. You have the Jim Tressel era, Urban Meyer era. If you really want to count it, the Luke Fickell era. And then Ryan Day, current era. And then, Michigan football. You want to talk about history, and that's another stadium I would love to go to is the Big House. But, Michigan football with their history, their national championships. A lot of these times, you're talking about this rivalry where, Ryan Day for the longest time too, it was like, great season, but you keep losing to Michigan, you might lose your job, or at least that was all the talk. But you got Woody Hayes over there at Michigan. Right? You've got these, not Woody, Bo Schembechler. I'm still on Ohio State talk here. But Bo and these rivalries between these programs and these coaches of Woody and Bo. A little trash talk, a little bit of hate going back and forth. But two iconic football universities where each university has had their ebbs and flows. They've had some highs and they've definitely have had some lows. And Michigan, that's another school too. You look back at it and you could throw Michigan in here for basketball. When I think about Ohio State, and I know they've had some success with basketball, you look at Greg Oden era, they made the national championship, Thad Matta, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they've had some success with basketball. But when you look at Michigan too, I think we still think about them for football, just based off history and that. But they've got the history too when it comes to basketball, men's basketball, whether it's the Fab Four in that era, right? Or just winning the national championship. They've had success at that level too. And I think it still gets a little underrated because football is still king. It's still king. But don't forget about their tournament champion runs too. I mean, 89 and 22, 89 in just this past year. And then they lost to Louisville, even though now Louisville was the vacated one with Rick Pitino. But here's an example of a university that you can make the case. Pretty darn good in both college football and college basketball. So you can't talk about one without the other. When you talk about Ohio State, though, you got to talk about Michigan Wolverines. When you talk about Michigan, you got to talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes. When you talk about college basketball, college football, these are just the first grouping. We've got more college teams. We've got more college programs and such coming your way. But with the story out there, where college football's at right now, thought, okay, you know what, for our next 10, let's talk about some college universities, some teams, some programs that when you think about the history, whether it's basketball, football, or whatever the case may be, and I know we highlighted mostly just football and basketball for these 10, you can't tell the history of that without mentioning these universities. They're brands. I mean, I remember a buddy of mine, okay, just really quick, a buddy of mine. You want to talk about brands? Michigan was a brand too, because a good friend of mine is a diehard Badgers fan. Diehard. But I remember in elementary school, what was his starter jacket? Those starter winter jackets? Michigan. It was a brand. And a lot of these universities that we mentioned, they're brands. They're iconic. All right. That's our 10. We got, 180 more to go, if my math is correct. So don't forget, all of these segments are available on the Man Cave podcast.